The standoff has finally come to an end. The college football playoff will be adopting a 5+7 format starting with this 2024 upcoming season of change. Which Big Ten teams have legitimate visions for playoff glory this upcoming season?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
I guess we gotta give Kirk Schultz and the Pac-2 a little bit of credit for kind of holding this thing up for a little bit to get some financial security for both Oregon State and Washington State the next two seasons. But that's the key there, the next two seasons. Because although we kind of wrapped this up, nicely put 5 automatic bids for conference champions, 7 at large for the 2024 and 2025 season. It's what's happening right now, the meetings and discussions that are happening as we speak for 2026 and beyond could be the next and biggest seismic shift in college football. Previously, if you wanted to contend for a college football national championship, Bowls and Polls, BCS, and a 14 college football playoff era, you needed to go undefeated. Maybe you throw in one loss. 2007 LSU, that was a crazy season, right? They had 2 losses. That was kind of the outlier throughout all of this. You needed to be pretty close to perfect, and that's why the college football regular season was as engaging as it was for a long period of time, because every single week was essentially the Super Bowl. Because if you felt you lost a game, you wouldn't be able to get back into the championship race. That won't be the case anymore. Now you got to act like those New York Giants teams that got hot at the end of the season. How about my 2010 Green Bay Packers that got in and played every single playoff game on the road en route to a Super Bowl victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers? It's going to be that same mindset. A team that's 4-2 in the middle of the season or 4-3 in the middle of the season. Previously, it's like, yeah, let's get to a New Year's Six bowl game. Let's get to the Outback Bowl. Let's get to the Citrus Bowl. Hey, maybe we'll make it to a conference championship game for maybe like some of those teams over in the Big Ten West. No, not anymore. Teams that are 10-2, teams that are 9-3, those are teams that will play and might possibly compete for a national championship going forward. So you have to make sure that you are playing your best at the end of the season. You might trip up early on, but when you get to late October, once you start getting into November, that's when you got to really start hitting your stride. Let's talk about 2024. I'm going to first talk about my contenders. Teams that can win a national championship. I'm going to go into wild cards. Teams that I expect to be in the race to maybe get some of those at-large bids. And then I'm going to talk about some dark horses. Teams that I maybe don't expect to get into the college football playoff, but if everything kind of bounces their way, these are teams to watch out for to maybe get in to that postseason tournament. All right, let's start first with the contenders. These are the 2 teams, as we're sitting right now in late February, that I believe can win a national championship. I expect Ohio State and Oregon to be preseason top 5 teams. Heck, they could be preseason top 3 teams with Georgia. Specifically, when you look at the Ohio State Buckeyes, this is a awesome defense. They return almost everybody. You lose Tommy Eichenberg, you lose Steele Chambers from that linebacking core, you plug in Cody Simon, you plug in CJ Hicks. It's not going to quite be maybe at the level of an Eichenberg, but it's still going to be pretty darn good. Oh, and then you just bring in Caleb Downs, one of the best freshmen in college football last season and young defensive players in the country. Defense wins championships is one of my favorite sayings, and Ohio State's defense may be the best in college football next season. Oh, they have another unit too, offense, right? When you talk about Ohio State, you usually talk about offense. You got an improvement, I believe, at quarterback going from Kyle McCord to Will Howard. Chip Kelly's your offensive coordinator. You got a two-headed monster of running backs back there with Trevion Henderson when healthy. can be one of the most explosive and dynamic backs in the country, and Quinshon Judkins coming over from Ole Miss. This is a team that is built to win a championship. And then when you look at the Oregon Ducks, that I believe is the best offense in college football. You have the best returning quarterback in college football transferring in to the University of Oregon. You might have the deepest wide receiver room in all of college football, right? Yes, you lose statistically one of the best receivers in the country last year in Troy Franklin, but Tez Johnson was a 1,000-yard, I think 1,100-yard actually, 10-touchdown type of guy last season. You bring in one of the biggest wide receiver transfers this season in Evan Stewart coming over from Texas A&M. Don't forget about Gary Bryant. Don't forget about Trayshawn Holden as well. And then Noah Whittington and Jordan James in the backfield. This is going to be an explosive offense. Will Stein had this Oregon machine humming last year. They maybe got some work to do to have a championship defense, but they've recruited really well on that side of the football as well. So the Buckeyes and Ducks. Bucks and Ducks, they play each other during the regular season. They could meet up in a rematch in Indianapolis the first weekend in December as well. I want to go to my wild cards. These are teams that I expect to maybe float around top 10, top 15 in the country and get into kind of some of those at-large spots. Michigan and Penn State. I talked about it this week on the channel. Michigan's got to figure some things out at quarterback. I think that's going to be the biggest question mark. That's going to be the biggest box that they have to check leading up to late August and early September. If they're able to get a quarterback and they figure things out and they feel confident with whoever they have at the quarterback position, this is a Michigan team that is built pretty darn well. That could be a top 10 team for most of the season, right? Although they lost a lot on defense, they still bring back a lot of really good players. Specifically, you look at that defensive secondary, Will Johnson is one of the best in the game. Rod Moore and Makari Page at the safeties position. How about that defensive line? Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Derek Moore are studs on that defensive line. A transfer that not a lot of people are talking about for Michigan, Jayshon Barham coming over from Maryland. How about the year before when they got Ernest Hausman from Nebraska? This defense is going to be a really good defense next year for the Michigan Wolverines. Donovan Edwards still on this team. Colston Loveland still on this team. Tyler Morris, Samaj Morgan. They just got to figure things out at the quarterback position. But I'll tell you what, this schedule is doing them absolutely zero favors. Texas, USC, Oregon on the road at Ohio State to finish the season. I said you need to go about 9-3, right? Those are 4 games right there that it might be pretty difficult to get by, right? You look at Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. If I'm looking at it right now, I don't know if Michigan wins any of those games. So you got to be perfect the rest of the way to try to get into one of those wild card spots. Let's talk about Penn State. I have faith that this offense can improve this season. Andy Kotelnicki coming in as the offensive coordinator, I believe, is going to be a little bit more creative. He's going to be a little bit more dynamic on offense. You bring in Julian Fleming from Ohio State. Keandre Lambert-Smith is back. Harrison Wallace is back. They've recruited really well on the offensive line. Oh, and then you just got Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, maybe the best running back duo in all of college football. Offense, I feel pretty good about for Penn State. Defense, I don't think they're going to be as good, right? You lose Manny Diaz, your defensive coordinator. You lose a lot in that secondary, guys like Kalen King and Johnny Dixon. But you do have one of the best linebackers in the country in Abdul Carter. Dane Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant on the defensive line as well. This defense is not going to be, I don't think, a top 5 defense in the country like they were last season. But they just got to be solid, and if that offense can improve enough, this is a Penn State team. And when you look at, if we had a 12-team college football playoff since 2014, Penn State might be one of the teams in the Big Ten that have made it the most in that type of format. They've been right around that 9 or 10 win level multiple times in the last 10 years or so. And you look at their schedule, no Michigan on the schedule, no Oregon on the schedule, and they get Ohio State at home. When you talk about no divisions and not having to play Ohio State and Michigan every single year and Penn State being unrivaled, the Nittany Lions were one of the biggest beneficiaries of that scheduling mix up a little bit and kind of shifting that around with no divisions. Let's get to the dark horses. These are maybe teams that I'm not expecting to be in the top 10, maybe not even the top 15, but if everything bounces their way, these are teams that have the makeup, and these are teams that have the schedule that could maybe make a run towards a playoff berth. The Iowa Hawkeyes and the Wisconsin Badgers. I'm going to start first with the team that I'm maybe not as confident in, and that's my hometown team, the Wisconsin Badgers. People, I can hear them now. They're saying, well, Ted is maybe looking at this maybe more from a fan perspective than an analyst perspective. And you might be a teeny bit right. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic every February, March, April, May when it comes to the Wisconsin Badgers. But when I really look at this team, it's really having faith in the second year of the process with Luke Fickell. I really believe Luke Fickell is a really good head coach. I thought when he was hired, he was probably the best hire of that coaching cycle, which included Matt Rule over at Nebraska. But when I look at Wisconsin, this is a team on offense that I expect to go full Longo this season and really lean in more to the passing game. Ches Malusi is the running back that's maybe a little bit more shifty, maybe a little bit more athletic. There were times for the Badgers last season where sometimes they looked like Longo wanted to throw it around a lot, and maybe like they looked at North Carolina. But then there were other games where Braylon Allen lined up in the backfield, and they pounded the rock like old school Wisconsin football. I think this year they're going to lean more into full Longo and really what Phil wants to do and how he wants that offense to look. Tyler Van Dyke is the key. Right? Which version of TVD are you going to get? If you can get that Tyler Van Dyke from earlier on his Miami career, you've got Bryson Green and Will Pauling, your top two receivers coming back. This is a Wisconsin offense that I think could really do some things. And then you look at defense, right? This is usually year two is when things take a jump. Mike Tressel and this defensive unit. In the secondary, they've got some pretty good players, I think. Even though they kind of took it on the chin in terms of their passing defense at times last season, Hunter Wohler is one of the best safeties in all of college football. Ricardo Hallman was a turnover machine towards the end of the season, and they did a really good job at linebacker in the transfer portal as well. This doesn't have to be a dominant defense. It doesn't have to be a Michigan defense. It doesn't have to be an Ohio State or an Iowa defense. Middle of the road to slightly above average, and then your offense really takes a lot of the responsibility. This is a Wisconsin team. Okay, they've got 3 really tough games, but they're all at Camp Randall Stadium. If they're going to catch one of these teams, it could be early in the season when Alabama comes to town. Nick Saban not on that sidelines anymore. He's not pacing up and down. This is a different team. This is a different program with Kalen DeBoer at the helm. If you're going to get them early while they're still trying to figure their program out down there in Tuscaloosa. Yeah, Oregon and Penn State, those are all going to be difficult. But once you get outside of those games, it's more of your traditional games. You know, your Nebraskas, your Iowas, those games that you know what you're going to get, and you got to try to find a way to win. Iowa. I feel a lot more confident in the Iowa Hawkeyes right now. This is a defense that brings back a whole lot. This is another great Phil Parker defense. And if you look at their schedule, they don't get Oregon, they don't get Michigan, and they don't get Penn State. When I look at the Iowa Hawkeyes, they have proven that they can just win football games. That this is a team that's got the formula down. They know how to come out on top in some of these close games. They won 10 games with Deacon freaking Hill and a bunch of injuries on offense. If Cade McNamara stays healthy, if Luke Lachey stays healthy, if Tim Lester can provide a little bit of spice to this Iowa offense, the schedule shapes up. The formula of how Iowa is successful shapes up for them to maybe win 9 or 10 games next season. I can't wait. Can we start playing football right now? Who do you think could be some Big Ten teams that could make a run towards the college football playoff? Leave that and all things 12-team CFP in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten TED, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten TED to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.